For 11/2023 meeting of the Bethlehem Township Planning Board to order, 7:32 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with Section 3D of Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Sunshine Law. Roll call, please.
Jose Reyes.
These are the,
Right.
you want me to get them?
No, they'll
Sure.
Judy Nelson. Here. Ken Chalet.
Here.
Grace Ann Kelly. Here. Philip Bellin.
Here.
Ryan Messinger.
Here.
Jose Maderos.
Here.
Brad Nelson.
Here.
Jeff Coletti.
Here.
Steve DiLorenzo.
Here.
Daniel McDonald.
Here.
Kara Kaczynski. Here. Tom and Megan. Yeah.
And please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No open to the public for the agenda item.
Motion opens to the public.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any comments, questions? Anybody on Zoom?
And I'm Brian.
Motion to close.
Motion to close to the public.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mark the record that Jose Reyes is coming back as of 7:34.
Okay, in front of everybody is the master plan draft. We're gonna kind of go through it, the overall discussion. When I ask the ordinance committee, the subcommittee for the master plan to make a couple comments beforehand of what this is overall. And then reorg is going to be in January naturally. So we will wait until that, in case there's any changes on the board before we move any further. And so.
When we last met, we went over items D, E, and F under the periodic reexamination. And then we went over a couple other issues as far as like the hazard mitigations and like the power outages and things like that. We discussed things like that. So all that's kind of towards the back, page 31 is those were basically things that we recommended. And you know, for the most part, I don't think that we really saw any need for any major changes. We did think that the ROM wasn't used, and we might want to consider changing there is a warehousing element allowed in the ROM, and we talked about getting rid of that. And the possibility of maybe allowing other things like gas stations or something like that in that area, especially that last area, and that's closest to the highway. Other than that, you know, there's certainly, you know, we talked about doing away with the or combining the highway commercial with the ROM, but really the ROM is an area that's far removed from any residential neighborhoods or anything like that. So it is better to have that as a separate distinction or the separated area, so that if we make changes to the highway commercial to take into account residential areas, that doesn't affect the areas that are the ROM now. Because again, they're kind of very distinct regions in the town. So I mean, I think, you know, from my recollection, that's about where we were. I don't know if the other members have anything to change.
Monica, just mark on the record of the mayor came back to the meeting at 7:36.
Yeah, now, like I have some comments, not necessarily from our meeting, but just in general.
This is all about discussion right now, so we got some
Okay.
ideas out there.
It's in at least 4 or 5 places, I see the cluster development is mentioned. I mean, is that for housing? Is that for business? But it is mentioned several times. If we weren't so restricted, we could do cluster development. I didn't understand it at the meeting. I don't understand it at the reading. What's the issue with that? It's one of those red flags to me.
Sure.
Okay,
Is there a specific section that?
well, it's on page 6, on page 10.
Page 6, that's just reiterating what this planning board said in 2004.
I agree with you totally.
Yeah, so that was cluster housing is a very useful tool. Most of our developments in this town were clustered, and what that does is it clusters, instead of having houses that are on 5-acre lots spread out all over a property.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a very useful tool, and it's done a lot of good in the town to make a lot of open space that has no houses and never will. And
But they use it here, for instance, on page 10.
where does it say anything about cluster? There's no cluster business.
Page 6 is cluster highway.
Page 10 middle, talking about the RMP's severe restrictions of non-residential development. And the middle paragraph,
Yeah,
and it says, prevents the township from pursuing creative cluster highway development, thereby encouraging.
I read it this way too, Jose. To me, either it's poorly worded, but to me it seemed to be contradictory.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of looked at that myself and I went, wait, creative cluster, thereby encouraging sprawling? It came out weird.
So let's remember, what they're talking about here is presumably, and obviously the planner can attest to this, but if we look back at the 2012 re-exam report, I'm assuming these were just taken right out of that.
Correct.
that's what this is.
Correct.
Yeah.
These are word for word what we all voted on to put into here in the 2012 review.
I agree with you. It doesn't mean that things have not changed in the town and everything else. And I keep seeing this on page 6, the same thing. And they use it when they talk about manufacturing. They use it when they talk about business. So I'm trying to say non-residential development. It's just, I'm wondering what she meant by that.
I'm not an
She didn't-
expert.
She did.
Yeah.
No, I'm
That was
not an
us.
expert on things, but when they talk about cluster, from things that I've read, please,
Mhm.
I'm not the guru of cluster developments. But it's when, for instance, when you have a town, like let's say, even if where they're going to put up strip malls, where you'll say, and I'm just gonna use 173 as an indicator. From what I've read, they talk about cluster development, where you don't want a deli over here or this one over there. You want them to go along the corridor of 173, let's say. For instance, when 22 was first built, it was a cluster development with the stores and the shopping. Cluster development, like Jose said too, with housing, there's different clusters. Because with housing, Long Island's a prime example of cluster developments that happen. And that's what they're talking about, rather,
Like Levittown?
exactly,
No,
exactly.
That's not cluster.
That's
So what
not-
cluster is, let's say we have 5 acre zone, okay, we could build, say you have a 100-acre lot, you have 5 acre zoning, you can build 20 houses spread out all over that property, okay, and what you would see is 20 houses spread out over the entire property and the entire property used up by housing. Clustering says, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the 20 houses that you could put on that 100 acres, and we're gonna say, they're all gonna be put in an area of like 1.5 acre houses, lots, and
Wow.
everything else
Okay, I
is
stand
going to
corrected.
be, and everything else is gonna be open space, preserved open space.
I think there's also a difference between
Yes,
what's
like-
income known as clustered development. And what I think in here might be just the use of the word cluster as an adjective.
Sure.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any such thing as cluster development.
I've never heard of cluster development for a commercial use. It's only been
I think it's just
development, so I think, yeah, I would. I mean, going forward, we should clarify, but it's really just reiterating language in 2012.
I think actually this was followed through from 2004. And I think that it was, and that was before we did that review before the Highlands passed.
I was gonna say, because even like the only cluster restriction would be the Highlands for the impervious coverage on a commercial property. So that in and of itself prevents sprawling, and you couldn't like pave over 10 acres and have buildings spread out across the.
I mean,
So the beginning of this is we are reiterating what was already agreed to in 2012.
yes,
Okay, we can make recommendations if we want this to change in the second half of this.
right.
So that's what this is. So the discussion is, do we look at removing some of that language?
Well,
Is that something again that we can have a planner go and explain to us in depth?
Yeah.
So
what you're
Yeah,
saying
it's
is very-
fine, because I think historically, then it has changed also. When people want, like I said, the stores and that, they call them clusters of
So-
stores, and they wanted stores in a certain area of their towns, and that's why some of the towns that are older have this shopping area, they didn't want to roll through throughout the town. And maybe it was a misuse of a word, but it seems that's, and maybe it may have been used differently throughout periods of history. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
so-
Yeah.
so
All
what-
right, so let's take this as, that's a discussion point to talk to a planner about. Because we can kick it around, but without having
Right,
somebody.
That's the definition of the clusters.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
So one thing that's a little confusing here is that we talk about the RMPs, severe restrictions. What we have now, all of our regional master plan falls under the Highlands. So we don't have any leeway on that. We have to follow the Highlands master plan.
Sure.
So, this is really obsolete. It's nothing that we can really, you can't change any of that. The only thing that we can do is be more restrictive than the Highlands already is. And that's what we did in the planning area.
Well, it states that on 10, it says the regional master plan vision for Bethlehem Township is a mandated very low residential density throughout most of the township and optional low density land uses in the planning area.
Right.
So even our commercial zone is in the preservation area, which is even more restricted than the planning area. So
Right.
that dictates who's the primary beyond whatever we put in here.
Right.
Then I would recommend changing them.
Yeah.
Well, we can't really change
Well, no,
language that's already been, again, what all this is doing is this is reiterating what this board did in 2012. So this is just the language that we put into here in 2012. There's another page going forward that says what we would recommend to continue to do going forward. That's in another section.
That's page 52.
yeah, that's way in the back.
52.
Okay, that's way in the back.
Right.
So I'm making a list, as we're going through this, I'm gonna make a list of things, points of discussion for Megan, so that I can send that to her in advance, so she can prep for those questions. So as I understand this question, just so I understand what you guys are wanting from her, clarification on the term, historic and current, and whether or not that can be altered in moving forward, although we can't change what was already in the historic documents, moving forward, is there any value in changing it moving forward?
We can't change something that's already historic.
We could ask.
No, we're saying.
No.
Recommend.
In the recommendation section, if it's worthwhile changing it or leaving it.
Right, because we can't edit it in the, only, I just wanna make sure I'm asking the question properly. What's in here as historic stays.
Right.
But in the recommendations, saying, is there any value in revisiting that wording in the new version?
But in the new version, I think we all, Jeffrey, I think we said that, we talked about doing that. But I mean, that's up to the entire.
Right, it's up to the entire board.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the recommendations that we made, as the subcommittee was, again, that we not get rid of the highway commercial and blend it into the ROM, that we remove warehousing from the ROM. And if not, and possibly just do away with the ROM completely, because it's basically obsolete, because there's nothing that we can really do there within the Highlands floor area ratio that could really, nothing that has come through since 2004 has been approved by the Highlands. So, I mean, it's, you know, it doesn't really make much sense to keep that zoning open and have people considering that if it doesn't qualify under the Highlands anyway. So those are things that we should, you know, that we would not make any kind of decisions on as the subcommittee. But it's certainly something that we should consider.
Jose, was there something else?
Yes, I just, 56, I had for 54. Review. I'm sorry, page 50, recommendation, redevelopment or relocation areas. The town doesn't have that. But that's one of the recommendations.
Recommendation.
Which one?
What, page 57?
E, page 56.
But it's saying that it says it right there, that the township does not have any designated areas needed to redevelopment or rehabilitation.
But he also says the town may want to consider designating.
Well, that's what we'll.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, she's putting it in there so that we can discuss it, but I don't know what areas we would designate are required for redevelopment, except for rehabilitation, except for the police.
173.
Right.
No, the police
The
part.
bleak form.
Well, here she mentioned 173.
But there's nothing on
You
173.
can designate the whole area,
The whole area is what she said.
and then you can define what goes in there. It doesn't have to be for commercial redevelopment. There's a lot of other benefits. John Jimenez, when he was a committee, he and I went to a seminar, so it took some time to pull the notes, but I would say even he was more ecologically inclined was somewhat supportive of that, because there are benefits to the town, but it doesn't have to be for warehousing or heavy industrial use. But it does give you some advantages in looking at how to rezone
Small
those.
stores, neighborhood related, that kind of.
And then there's some tax advantages, and then also some other support that would be given to you. We did that, and you can do sections, but the recommendation, even many years ago, 5, 6 years ago, was to look at 173 as a whole, just because of the inconsistency of the area.
There are a few of those, but I just want to highlight those.
But really, I think that we should kind of start on section D, right? Because that's where this really,
What page is
because
that?
everything else is history.
52.
52.
Everything else is basically history, or, you know, you know, a lot of the demographics that we base what we're doing on.
Question on the demographics, but the largely based on the 2020 census. I know it's done every 10 years, but how outdated is the 2020 census? And the assumptions made in it, given the rapid change than we had in the last 3 years. Like I was looking at the commuting times and all that type of stuff, and the percentage of residents who are commuting.
Work from home.
Yeah, I mean, Brad's a prime example, who would have been in the longest category is now in the shortest category, and I don't know if that affects anything, like, I was just looking at that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, it was quickly outdated. I don't know
Yeah.
all the numbers, but I know there's some question, based on school board seats, so I'm kind of extrapolating that back. As far as representation for our regional high school, because the 2020 census reflected actually a drop. But the real number of today is actually higher than what it was, so we've experienced a little bit of growth, but it's not reflected in that 2020 census. So it's inaccurate, that's the best way I can describe it. I couldn't tell you how much, but it is inaccurate.
But what's changed then really isn't, it's not the population isn't what's changed, it's the commute times and things like
I
that.
don't know how much the population.
I mean, the number of the population number went up by a little over 100 some odd.
Yeah, but I mean, that, you know, that always goes up or down, but from the census itself, but that's to be expected now, because that's why we do it every 10 years. No?
Well, I think, I mean, there are two things that happened with COVID, right? One, you had to work from home. The other thing that happened is a lot of people did leave the state, and a lot of people moved out of the cities to be more with kids. You know, so again, that did change the demographics a lot more. You're going from 2 people in a house to now having 4 people in a house, when you're getting a lot of the retirees saying, just let me get away from it.
Yeah.
You know, and again, just the natural, I mean, New Jersey's got one of the highest migrations out of the country.
Right.
But again, though, we've had a ton of people moving in from the cities coming out here and moving in from the more denser areas to be more rural.
But I think that, I mean, we haven't had any construction. You know,
No,
I mean,
you're going from like basically going from a 2-person house to going to a house with a bunch of kids in there.
right, but I mean, that's basically,
Increase.
but that's basically been the norm for this town forever. I mean, you know, when we were having all of the developments coming in, you know, almost every single house that was being built was more than 3 bedroom houses.
It's not as bad as what it was when,
Yeah.
you know, before Highlands was new out there.
Right, exactly. That's the thing. That's what stopped dead when the Highlands came to, which, you know, really saved us down. Because I mean, we were getting we were getting crushed by development before that, and then it stopped dead as soon as the Highlands went there. So I mean,
I think the other
I mean, the fact that we have houses that are 4 or 5 bedroom houses all over, you know, we would expect those houses to be filled with families with kids.
The other demographic that I've been reading a lot about is the return of people coming back to their homes. So, you know, again, a lot of people graduate college and instead of going off working or coming back home, and families coming home also.
Right, but I mean,
so again, though, but it is a percentage increase, right? We're making the homes more dense and you're building them up.
But is that you know? So at some point in time, that had to have fallen off for them to come back in, because unless we're building more houses, you can't be bringing in new people. You know what I'm saying?
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
You know, as I recall, when we went through the demographic data, one of the big things that we took away from it is kind of to your point, like the use of properties and the time in the township is what's really changing. You know, instead of those people leaving their house at 5 a.m. and commuting off into New York City and then coming home at 8 o'clock at night, you've got more people who are telecommuting or spending time in the township. And that's why we talked a little bit more about, if we think about economic development in this area, we should be thinking about amenities and things that are important to people who are here all day, as opposed to people who are, you know, darting to the highway at the early morning hours and they're gone and they're never here all day long. We want to appeal to the people who are here more often now, which is just the nature of the working environment that we have. There are more people who are kind of just homebodied or at least closer to home, and the demographic data started to support some of that.
Yeah, and that was my reason for pointing out the demographics and how quickly it changed, was exactly that point. What do we take into factor when it comes to?
But one thing is, again, I mean, if we have a census every 10 years, realistically, you can't make changes based on COVID years. I mean, we have to have a baseline. Baseline is every 10 years, and federal government did it in 2020, and it'll be 2030 before we have different results.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
So we kind of have to, I mean, yes, we have some pretty substantial changes. I think we'll be able to address them maybe next year, the home occupation ordinance and stuff like that to help out the countywide recommendation information that they gave us. We can work with all that.
I mean, one thing that I wonder, Judy, is have you seen, I mean, I know that a lot of companies that said that everybody could work from home are now kind of reversing that and saying everybody's got to come back. So, I mean, this could be a temporary thing too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I don't know, you're not that.
No, from what I've seen.
Doesn't look like.
Talk to people in a whole bunch of different businesses. It seems like, at least in my opinion, the biggest trend now is they're reopening an office with a smaller footprint.
Right.
So that there's conference rooms, the executives will have their fancy offices and, you know, pressing machines and whatever. And then there'll be some, if you want to go in and meet with your team, you can do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm for the first time in 3 years going to an office in Morristown on Thursday, right? But my company is, since we're consultants, I don't think our company is going to ever reopen their offices like they used to, because they'll just send us to our clients that are working. Right. So I think there's a mix there, but I think even the big companies that are not consulting companies are opening with smaller footprints. And just saying, work from home. If you need to come in, we'll have space available. Just reserve the room and you can come in and eat.
Or you're going to 1 or 2 days.
1 or 2 days. But it's always 1 or 2
Right, but to do 2 or 3 days, you've got to rotate which people go in on which days, right? So it's still a smaller footprint. It's still less commuting time, less
If you look at New York City's office vacancy, it's still very
it's
high.
like 50%.
Only about a third of the people have actually moved back.
But there are other variables too, and economics plays a big part too. How the economy goes. It's not only just for the workers, it's for the retirees. People age. The people that you're talking about in the 90s and 80s buying property now are older, you know, and some are still in town, some aren't, you know. There also children age out. Some go, some come back and stay with families, depending a lot of times on economics. And that's a hard thing to gauge. You know, you kind of keep with baseline things and say, perhaps this will happen, but you can never be positively sure. You know, a lot of this is all tied to economics, how people live and what they do. People are moving out back to the cities too. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole thing, you know. You follow economics a little closer, and it may be a precursor to what might happen too. Because some people stay when they retire, some don't. Some keep working. Yeah, they're retirement age, but they're not really retired. You know, all these kind of things, you know, factor in.
Yeah, I think some of the people that left the city for the suburbs, they're now going, oh, I have to drive 30 minutes to get a good sandwich at lunch. Like, I don't want to do that now. Like, I was afraid of COVID. I was afraid of being packed in those.
You know, it's not positive.
And now that it's over, it's like,
but
well, I don't like being out in the woods.
when they move to suburbia,
And your power.
I got a restaurant for them.
Okay, so kind of moving through some discussion topics, page 55. You bring up the Emerald Airport beetle, and the devastation that's happened in this town and other towns. We're talking about our town. Is significant impact. Something else that's affecting, I think that in you're on social media, you see it, the trees coming down and loss of power, significant problems. The other significant problem is truck traffic. All right, those are real things that are affecting everybody almost on a daily basis. So yeah, you know, in reference to the master plan, we have at page 57. I'm sorry, 55. 55. I think that should have some sort of
I mean, what could we possibly do?
We have to get these, I mean, again, trees need to be, we have a lot of ash trees in this town.
Yeah,
A lot.
but what can we
And
do?
we are a tree community. I mean, and so,
I don't even see that as a recommended tree, that's why I pulled that
What,
ordinance that we have.
the ash tree was not.
you better not be.
No, no, I'm saying, no, I guess what
Oh,
I'm
you
getting
mean
at
in our,
is
in our
this,
tree ordinance.
this says, yes, exactly, so
Yeah.
determine whether tree replacement ordinance should require stricter standards, review to see if there are standards in place. You know, with regard to certain things, but if we look at section 102-23, that does outline recommended street trees, recommended,
I think what we were talking about when we said that, and I don't think it was communicated effectively, was that we have to see about taking down those trees, not about
okay,
replacing
so I was gonna say, we have that in place,
Yeah,
and what's recommended, and
Yeah,
that's
so
not.
it's kind of poorly worded.
Removing dead trees and 10 feet of power lines or.
Okay,
structures.
all right, that makes a little
We
more
were
sense.
to go there, but that was part of the discussion.
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, I think that it's a good thing to bring about for hardening our utilities, but it's up to the township committee to decide, how much money we're gonna spend on taking down all these dead trees.
Well, I think the other topic was that we discussed was, can you get a grant? Can you get some kind of aid from the state? Because this is a
Statewide
national
problem.
Yeah. Yes, that,
Yeah,
Statewide problem.
but the national problem, for sure.
Yes,
I mean,
Well, it's more, northeast region.
Yeah.
the Midwest is having.
But,
But I mean, that again, I mean, I think grants are outside of the scope of the planning board, right? That would be more the township committee. So I mean, that again is something that, I mean, maybe it's a good thing to have in the master plan to encourage the township committee to do something, but.
well, it is a quality of life problem.
But what I'm saying is, it's twofold, so that either then you have something in the tree ordinance that strictly you require residents to cut down their trees that are dead, that are in the danger zone, you define what that is. And in the town, we did go out and we talked to Congressman Kane about some transportation funding along with Union Township. I think it was lost because they were working on trying to get the tunnel restarted. Now that that has happened, maybe we can re-engage that conversation, without that as, casting a shadow upon our ask in 2024, but we weren't gonna get funding for trees until that tunnel reopened, so.
The one thing that I would be careful about too is blaming all our power outages on ash trees coming down. I think it's a lot bigger problem than just that.
It's more than just ash trees.
Yeah, I think that our electrical grid in this town has been ignored for a very, very long time.
well, that hasn't changed.
You're ready for an upgrade,
There's,
except you're gonna pay for it. But
there's funding coming out for it.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty fair what they're asking for, but you'll see an upgrade over the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think people in town would not mind paying a little bit more for that. I mean, you well know, I had a telephone pole with 3 transformers on it that had cracked during Superstorm Sandy. And the guy came out to deal with something else and he saw that. And he marked it up, oh, we gotta replace this telephone pole. They put a new telephone pole next to it after about 2 weeks. And then nobody came to do anything. It was still sitting there broken. This town is extremely neglected as far as GPU goes.
These are the things like there's grant funding as well for broadband service, but so these are the things like the details of it wouldn't be in here, but to say that we want to harden the electrical system, communication systems, that would be something you put in here, and then how it's actually executed is something that's different.
Exactly.
But that should be something that possibly be in the plan.
Yeah,
And really, like Brian was bringing up, then maybe when you talk about economic development, we see, agritourism maybe added, and, we're talking about home-based business or incubator businesses, we can add that. But these are like guidelines, not necessarily identifying what those are, not necessarily identifying the actions to take to hardy that infrastructure.
Right.
Another issue. On page 54, the second bullet. Talks about warehousing, not a permitted use within zoning districts. Yet at the bottom of that same bullet, it says, the township should review the zoning ordinance to ensure the only appropriate form of warehousing are located within the township. That's a contradiction.
Well, she's wrong in the first assumption, because we do allow warehouses in the ROM. And that's what we're
Like I
talking
said, that's a.
I think what happened was, is we were talking to her about removing that, the warehousing from the ROM, because it would never fly as far as the square footage that's required. So I think that she misunderstood what we were saying. I think, you know, the correct wording there really should be that we have to discuss, you know, removing warehousing from the ROM. And then I think that we were also talking at the same time about changing the ROM, because we're never gonna get, you know, a big research facility to come in either, because that doesn't fit either. You know, office, so it stands for research, office, and manufacturing. So research and office is basically gone, because of the square footage.
You can build out, I'd ask our engineer, you can build out about a 98,000 square foot facility in the one piece of property that's designated as an RM zone right now.
Right.
So that's just as a guideline. What is that big enough for warehouse? No, it's big enough for manufacturing. So you need to consider that there is a possibility that somebody thinks that's big enough. So there's the stream there. So you're only using about 40% of the property, but it's about 98,000 square feet.
Does that actually fall into our what's the term? There's a certain term that
Impervious area?
No, there's you've said it before.
Okay, I mean, it's something that we can still look at further.
Floor area.
Yeah, because we had somebody interested, so I was concerned. I would consider that a threat to Bethlehem Township, so I wanted to know what the threat was, so.
For a warehouse.
So we had our engineer tell us what the largest could be built, so if somebody did come with a plan, we could make changes to protect the township.
Yeah, so if we just took warehousing out of the ROM immediately, that would be a safe move.
Yes.
And so you think that we should leave research and office in there? I mean, manufacturing, I don't think is gonna work either, but I mean, 100,000 square foot or 90,000 square foot facility could be a good manufacturing.
Is a grow facility considered manufacturing?
A grow,
Cannabis?
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's.
I don't think it's manufacturing, I think that's growth. You can grow and manufacture in the same place.
I mean, I don't know whether or not what that would fall under, but I don't think we allow it anyway.
We don't allow it, yeah. So-
No, not right now.
No, but if the license didn't go well, you probably could put it on that property. That's probably just a site plan and not any other approvals. Pretty good thing to consider.
So I think that's what we're talking about as far as warehousing goes, was actually taking it out of there. So she must have misunderstood what we have, because it isn't permitted use right now.
And then final, section F. Electric car charging. The state is pushing it. So we have to.
Yeah, so I mean, that's certainly something we were talking, we talked about possibly doing it as putting a charging station at the park. You brought that up. I think that's something that you had recommended in the past. But then I think we went further to say that they should include them in new businesses that are put in along 173 or anything like that. Yeah.
Those would be required most likely by the state rules.
At this point,
Yeah.
okay.
For new,
For new building.
correct.
Yeah.
Pre-wired electric vehicle chargers.
Pre-wired,
and not holding up, you gotta do that.
They make ready parking spaces, but then you have to.
That's part of the new energy plan, you have to have cars.
But you are, it's a process.
But right now.
So if you're required to put in 10 make ready spaces, you then have to expose.
I agree.
By others. 30% the first year, 60% the second year, something like that. There's a phase process.
So that's something else, anywhere else besides the park,
Well, again.
We talked about it here.
as a discussion, you know, but.
I think probably here, we already have a business in town that's working on adding charging stations. And there is funding for it, so then I was just talking, part of that update, we're looking to recertify for sustainable New Jersey, and part of that is electric charging stations.
I would think that it makes sense for places like Spain Inn and what used to be the landslide. Muddy water, yeah, I mean, you know, it makes sense for places like that, you know, I mean.
The diners, it's not there.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, especially Tesla directs you to their charging station, so, you know, if you're gonna have to, you gotta stop and charge all
The
the
only problem
time.
with muddy waters is it's alcohol, so you don't necessarily want to go in and
Well,
drink your car's structure.
yeah, but I mean,
That might be a problem.
they don't have to charge.
20 minutes, right?
They don't have to drink, they can just eat. I mean, it is a restaurant too.
Realistically, the park is probably the best.
Yeah.
Especially with people working from home, it gives you the walk around the park, a break.
You're not supposed to be in there at night.
At night.
Right.
Well, again, we can limit.
Yeah, sure, we have the cameras down there now, but I'm concerned about the charging station.
Can the stations be turned off at, 6
Yes,
o'clock,
they can
8
be.
o'clock?
They can.
They're not gonna work, so if somebody was down there, they can't charge anything.
They have it, I mean, again, just.
So the people park there all night and in the morning.
Well,
But when they're
No,
plugged in.
Well, one time, and hopefully they're smart enough to go do it again, because no request.
Again, no,
Big.
when you're plugged in, there's a record.
Good point.
So the person who's charging down there isn't gonna be trashing the park because the record exists that they were used to.
They're not worried about the stations being damaged.
but if it's closed, they get there and it's closed, then there's not gonna be any record of it.
Then nobody pissed and smashed the machine.
And it's, yeah,
Okay.
it's something that we definitely have to address because the state wants it and again, to be certified. That's gonna be part of our master plan. All right, let's make a motion to open the public, just have any comment about what was just spoken about for the master plan.
Second.
All those in favor? Suzanne?
I don't actually know what you're reviewing. It's a periodic review. Is that what your document? So, actually, I have two questions. The ones that, been posted, there was one from February 27th, 2012, and one July 9th, 2012. And the July 9th one was a lot shorter than the. So I was curious which one you guys were basing it off of.
They're both included.
So you kind of combined the two and then.
Yeah.
And then gave that as the historical. I don't remember why there was two, honestly.
Because basically, we changed planners in the middle of it.
Clark Hayton and Hintz did both of these.
Yeah, but
the planner left.
yeah,
Original planner working.
what was her name?
I forget her name, but then we had
Lisa.
So essentially, there was almost two, why didn't they just combine it? Why didn't they make the February one?
The senior partner, and so he, whatever he.
Okay, so essentially what you're reviewing is a combination of these two and then add it on.
Yeah.
But you want to add on.
And also back to the 2004 as well.
Oh, you're using that too?
Doing now,
Yeah,
just now?
yeah.
That's the draft of the new.
No, I understand that. It's just,
So we're looking at historical.
Oh,
2012.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know exactly what's in it, and I don't know when my comments are allowed to be input, but I would like to see comments excluding warehouses in the township, not just the ROM. I would like to make sure that there's adequate mention of inappropriate development and impact on impervious coverage. And you mentioned that 173 is redevelopment. That's like designated redevelopment
If we
area.
designated an area in need of redevelopment.
I personally recommend not to have it mention redevelopment, because if it's redevelopment and the site has over 70% pervious coverage or is a brownfield, then warehouses are permitted, whereas if it's not redevelopment, Highlands won't allow them. So I'd be very careful of labeling something redevelopment, from my understanding. I'd like to have mentioned, and I don't remember how the tree ordinances was worded, but encourage larger, older growth trees and intact forest as carbon sequesters. And that could be also part of the green team's effort. I don't know if the new stormwater regs are mentioned in the plan, the MS4, and make sure that it's mentioning all the new ordinances and, okay, because I didn't see it, so I don't know. This kind of, and I just mentioned, but like in the utility services plan, part of the master plan, that, you know, make sure that, I think it's already worded, but just to make sure that it's not in inappropriate development, that, in other words, don't allow development that will exceed the environmental or infrastructure capacity. So it might already be there, but I'm just mentioning it. And then the other thing is, as I was reading the master plan from 2004, there's mentionings of inventories that were done in 2009 and one done by Coppola, which is from 1984. Shouldn't those be updated and those changes corrected in the actual master plan itself? I mean, why are we, I mean, assuming we did a new, what was it, the land use inventory since 2009, and I'm sure we've done, oh no, the land use inventory mentioned in the master plan was dated 1984 by Coppola. So I think someone should go through the master plan, the actual master plan, and make sure the inventories are, references are corrected, and that the inventories are up.
They stand alone as separate documents, again, like this has got like bylaws.
I understand that, I'm saying the references to them. There's references of inventories that are, I think, probably out of date.
No,
That's what
we
I'm
always
saying.
have to reference, that's one of the things, one of the reasons that we have to do this, is we have to make sure that those are all up to date, and then we reference the latest.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's
but that's what
exactly
this
what I'm
does.
saying.
Sounds like, we'll double check it, I can't tell you whether.
I mean, when it wasn't done in 2012, when the re-exam, I mean, I just read the 2014 master plan, and it mentions.
Space, inventory was actually done.
It was a land, one was a land use inventory, not just open space, because that's the Rossi, but there was another inventory, Highland DRI.
That's redone, done as well, it'll be done with this.
Right, so just make sure that those references in the actual final master plan. So one more thing before so this is being done. So in 2012, there was a re-exam, and then the master plan came out in 2014. So it was like 2 years later. So is that what we're expecting, kind of the same this time around too?
We're not gonna have this year.
No.
Yeah, I would hope 2024 we would see it.
Yeah.
So so not only the re-exam, but a whole brand new master plan.
No, we don't have to do a whole master plan.
Okay, I'm not asking my question correctly. There's a master plan right now that's July 2014. There was a re-exam done in 2012. I'm assuming that 2014 master plan, which is based on from the re-examination.
But, yeah.
So I'm not saying you have to do another master plan, I'm asking.
Wasn't it, please correct me, 2014, wasn't that when the Highlands actually approved a master plan?
It was called the Highlands Master Plan.
Did in 2012.
we started the
Our
process.
re-exam was 2012. Highlands was
2012, and then it was
Right.
handed to the
So-
Highlands.
And
for
then we
their
had to
review.
adopt Highlands plan in 2014.
So the same thing will happen with
Yeah.
this time. After we do our re-examination, the Highlands, it all goes back to the Highlands. Then the Highlands looks at that and says, okay, you know, this is, our master plan will be updated basically just with the things that you mentioned, the ERI, the SRI, and those things, and anything that we decide to do under the re-examination. So, you know, one of the things we're recommending is removing warehousing from the only place that warehousing is allowed in the
Well-
town, which is the ROM. Where else is it allowed?
You can put words in that excludes it from the town.
Well, I mean, we certainly can, but the only place it's allowed now is the ROM.
Okay. I don't know the details. I'm just saying you could put blanket statements in excluding it from any redevelopment, because
That's
right
fine.
now.
I mean, we'll
Look
take
at
that.
So in other words, after this re-examination process is done, we will get a new master plan out of that from the Highlands.
Yes,
What you're saying,
from the
that's what
Highlands,
I'm
not
trying to
from us.
understand.
Yeah.
I didn't mean from you guys, I'm just trying to think of the
Our
process.
sequence. Our process will be done next year, but then
Yeah, and then Highlands gets involved. So when does the public get to comment on the re-exam?
That's what we'll be discussing for, I haven't brought that up yet. About
It'll be
when-
next year, though.
when, it's gonna be next year.
Yeah.
So,
We'll have the
After-
planner,
yeah,
we're gonna have the planner in here for discussion with the whole board, and then we have to, organize something for a public comment period and discussion period. And then, there'll be an attached committee.
now are you comfortable releasing recommendations
right.
before or after that meeting?
That's why I think this, as it sits now, should be released. Just for public comment.
I disagree. Because this is not, you know, we did not create this to be,
This is not the planning board document, these are
Right.
recommendations.
this
Planners to the
is
planning
this is just our discussions as a subcommittee. We don't have any authority to make any changes. That's why
We're
we
not
made
making changes, but.
That's why we made suggestions in here so that we could all now discuss it as the whole board.
Once
I can tell you
approved,
what the land use
And
and
process.
once approved, we could release it.
Yeah, it's not, we haven't made any changes yet.
Yeah, typically, way the land use process goes is, there's a draft, there may be one draft and maybe 10 drafts.
Yeah.
Once the document is in a form that this board feels comfortable with, then it's released to the residents.
Yeah.
You can then decide if you wanna have a public hearing a week after you do it, a month after you do it, 3 months after you do it, however it is you wanna do it, but. The way it's required, you could always do more or less, but the way it's required is once there's something you feel comfortable with, then it's released, then you schedule it.
So I would like to release this now, but I think the issue with that is like the warehouses, like it says. There's inconsistency, so it's a recommendation of the planner to the planning board, but I think all of us would like to make it very clear that we don't want warehouses. So if we put this on the website, and people who aren't at this meeting and who won't reach out to us are gonna say.
May I make one comment? So I guess my point is however the process is gonna happen, that when the public comes before with comments, that it's not too late for the planner to make those changes if the board agrees on those changes. I agree with your statement, and I totally agree, put something out there that's not ready for fine time publishing is not good.
The point is not to put something out to basically jam down and we just throw it. That's not what we're doing.
My goal, maybe we talk to the subcommittee and the planner, is give out enough information that those who want to attend that public meeting.
Right.
Have something to prepare questions. And then I hope, and I think we are all on the same page, that based on the public input of that meeting. We may or may not, but at least we take that input into consideration to make any changes.
Right.
It's not, when we get to that meeting, it's not, oh, this is what the planning board's comfortable with.
What,
We want feedback.
well, I don't know, and it's might cost you a little bit more money. I don't know, I forgot what the grant, because you're gonna have, you might potentially have to have the planner go back and make changes. And as long as that's
But
acceptable,
she expected that.
okay.
Yeah, that was her interpretation of how this was gonna go was that once these recommendations were made and we, the board, determined what this was gonna actually look like, and that has to have her input at the same time. Then we're gonna have the public meeting that would then work towards drafting the final the final reexamination report, which would then have input from the community as well as.
Well, but using the word final is a little bit problematic here, because final means it's it.
But at some point, it's gonna be a final report.
All right,
Also,
so basically putting together a final draft,
thank you.
final draft,
But the final,
which is then gonna be released to the public.
no,
How many
the
times
final.
is the public gonna get an off and
I would like final and draft in the same sentence, I just leave it at that, it's either final.
Oh, we're putting a
Or
draft
it's a
together,
draft.
which
Right.
then, and
This is a draft that has been approved for distribution to the residents by this board. That's,
Not this,
no, not this one,
this is the
because
first-
we heard all these changes that we're gonna be making.
right,
Just the
yeah,
first-
so once we get a draft that we're comfortable with to discuss with the public, that we've got our, that we have our positions down clear, then the public will be involved, and that's what will determine the final report. And there has to be at some point a final report, because
I'd like to hear what the planning board secretary.
Only because the process that I have in place with Megan is that we would have a preliminary meeting today so that everybody has looked at it. We can have a preliminary conversation so that we can kind of see the bugs and what have you. Then we would schedule for her to come in and have a conversation that would be for the board with the planner to address any questions that come up from this meeting or that meeting or in between.
okay.
Once that's done, she'll go back, she'll make any changes, integrations, make the clarifications, submit that to everybody, and then we would have a public meeting.
Right.
And that is where everybody will, from the residents or from whoever would like to have input, would come, have conversation, raise issues, questions. She would then take that as with the board at that time and be able to say, okay, these are things we're going to want to change, not change, what have you.
Right.
Then she would come back with another draft, we would approve it. But before we have the first public meeting, we would have that draft that's approved.
Right.
It'll go up on the website, it'll be made available, and we will determine, you guys will determine, do we want that to be up for 2 weeks, a month, however long, so that we can make sure that the most amount of residents have the opportunity to really read it and have comment. Then, once it's all decided and it's what the board wants, we've heard from the public, and we have the final, what we want to have approved, we will then have the public hearing, which she would be at too. There's 2 public meetings on the
Oh, so
budget.
there's two.
Okay.
There's 2. So
But
one
the
is for
second one-
input,
And the second one then would not allow for any changes.
right?
Can you
That's
put
what I
this,
said.
can you put the
How many changes?
plan up on the website so everybody's, the public is
That's what
clear?
we're talking about.
No, no, no.
We're talking about when.
No, she's
I'm not-
saying what I just said,
Yeah,
what that.
I didn't say the
process is.
when, so I'm talking
I mean,
about.
I did put it in, I thought I had it in
It's
the
in the
newsletter, but I will.
Oh, I
put it-
have the newsletter, but I
Oh,
didn't read it
It's
that
not
way.
as clear, I'm just.
Yeah.
wanting-
I think she
Just
said it, I'm
bullets.
sorry, she said it clearer than you did.
Yes. Okay, so
Did I not ask that?
And the other thing is, when, like, Ken, I don't mean to pick on you, but when you first sat down, you said, okay, let's review the master plan. I think you have to be very careful of the words, because you're reviewing the re-examination of the master plan. So, I know it sounds picky, but to me, it's important, because that master plan is what, 200 pages or something? And this is what, 50? So what you're reviewing, I think, is correct terminology is needed, especially in this process.
So we'll have basically what Monica is bullet pointed.
Thank you.
We'll have Luke put that on one of the front pages so that everybody can really see where we're going.
Well, you can put it on the master plan link, because I think if you start putting things all over, then they get lost. You can reference it on the front page of the website and saying,
That way everybody can go to a known spot to see.
Exactly.
What point we're in.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the public? Need a motion to close that?
Good evening, everyone. Happy holidays. And thank you for restoring the heat.
I'm sorry, your name? again?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Andrew Laffey, 3 Farrow Lane. Just wanted to thank everyone for restoring the heat to Connolly Station or Connolly School, so that way kids are warm without space heaters. Very important. There was 98 acres that was mentioned. Is it possible to clarify the lot and block number for that location, please?
98 acres.
You're talking about the 98,000 square foot.
Or 98,000 square foot, yes.
I think it's 96 acres, I'm not sure the exact size.
The block and lot number then?
Yeah, but it is,
It's just it was just a theoretical maximum that could be built
On that piece of property.
on
there's only
any.
one property that's the research office of manufacturing, I don't know it, and then not to be flip about it, but the tax map in the corridor here, it's the only zone that's ROM, so you can see it's
Sweet.
colored.
We don't have a lot and block number for that?
We do, I don't know it offhand, I couldn't tell you right now. Maybe go out and look.
We know what the property is, but
It's it used to be the Culverson property. I don't know that it's owned by Culverson.
No, no.
It's the property that's just before you get onto Route 78.
On the right.
173.
On the right.
Yeah, right inside. That's the only non-preserved ROM. All the rest, there's a lot of other ROM property, but it's all preserved. So that's the only piece that's still not preserved.
Okay, so at the end, would somebody be willing to show me the lot and block number on the map, please? Thank you. And then Suzanne, thank you for your in-depth questions. You kind of beat me to the punch. The timeline based on what was previously discussed. How much notice will be given to the public and how will that notice be provided?
Well, notice will be provided because we have to publish in the newspaper required now.
Sure.
You've heard that we're gonna have 2 separate public meetings, so I don't know if that will be done for both. But the notice required for the municipal land use law of any master plan reexamination or new master plan changes has to be published in the newspaper. It'll be on the agenda, which I'm sure is also posted on the website. And from what I'm hearing, the time of notice, whether, you know, how much time you will have to take a look at everything, they'll determine,
Right.
they'll determine that down the road.
Okay, because based on what was stated by, can't remember the name of the other attorney that was here previously. She said January, February-ish. Is that?
I'm the only attorney.
There was, oh, I'm sorry, the planner. The planner, she stated January or February was the estimated timeline. Is that still accurate?
I haven't.
But then, that's a discussion point, but I mean.
The reason I ask is because people have lives and they do things, and to have advance notice would be very much appreciated.
Like I said, what the secretary just brought up is gonna be put on there so that there'll be a link to that. We'll know at what section we're actually in. We can highlight
Right.
what we're currently doing.
Right.
And then that'll be published both on the website and in the newspaper and everything else.
And on the Bethlehem Township Facebook page as well.
That's not an
We don't have
official,
a Facebook page.
that's not an official source for us. We have.
So somebody else could repost it on there, essentially.
Anybody can, they're free to do that. But,
Okay.
you know,
I
officially, we
did
have
say
two
today that I
newspapers and
That once,
website.
I did say today to somebody who was asking whether or not, I told them that once we had a date that I would post it on that. So
That's you personally.
That's
not-
me personally.
The board does not
Yeah,
have
not part of the
any.
board.
But that will
We
be
don't have
announced,
social media presence.
that will be announced at some point at a planning board meeting,
Correct.
which at that point will become public knowledge.
Well, it'll be public knowledge as soon as it's published in a newspaper and.
But we don't have the timeline as to when
Not
that
yet.
amount of time in between will be. Okay, and then,
And I think you've definitely heard from the board, just so there's absolutely no confusion, that they want to make sure that the residents have plenty of time to take a look.
and the residents.
That's very important to them.
And the residents want to make sure that we have enough notice, residents, neighbors
Absolutely.
have enough notice that we can all make plans to attend with busy schedules, so. My last question pertains to block 34, lot 12. How does that particular property play into the master plan in terms of what's ongoing now and what continues to be ongoing as the board has been provided with numerous amounts of documentation showing what our neighbors have seen, heard, smelled, tasted.
I don't know,
So-
do you know what property that is?
Yeah, that's Manini's property.
So as far as there's nothing that's been directly discussed, there was a bullet point again. That was a recommendation.
I don't think we made any recommendations about
Very
that.
careful about that.
Because
No.
it's, that right now, that property is under litigation, we can't.
Yeah, correct.
I agree, but it's,
The planner
that
did
does,
make a recommendation to, it's a split zone.
that was a
In
recommendation.
general, planners
Yes.
recommend, correcting split zones during reexamination.
Because it's Highlands Mountain
It's a
residential,
mix of that residential and highway commercial.
right? So is that gonna change?
That's the recommendation.
I mean, that has to be spoken about during the master plan, I mean, litigation.
Again, the discussion, the exact wording, the township should identify split zone properties and rezone as a single zone district as appropriate based on location, existing use and surrounding uses.
So does that mean it will go
Doesn't mean
completely?
anything, that was
Okay.
a recommendation that was in here.
Mhm.
Just to let you guys know, a recommendation that was in there, it's, and as any planner would say, and basically land use wants to get split zone. Remove any properties which are split zone. It makes it better for everybody involved.
So what essentially are the options of the outcome from
We
the
don't
master
know,
plan?
we
We
have to
don't,
discuss that,
so that will be to be determined then?
absolutely.
Okay, and it will be discussed specifically at some point? All right, thank you very much for your time.
I was gonna share, but for those who are on Zoom, as well, the, zoning map is on the township website, so if you go to the BethlehemNJ.org, do a search, you can find the tax map, it's the same one that's hanging here. I believe that property, the RM zone is block 25, I don't have the lot number, but I think it's the entirety of the block. So we can look at it afterwards.
That's off of Person Road or something.
Yeah, it's a wedge of Person and 173 to the on the river and the on ramp 78. It's that piece in that block there.
Paul, the map is right off the resources menu on the homepage.
Yes, thank you, Lou. Yes, the resources menu. I just Googled tax map or zoning map and it came right up. I just looked that up, Township NJ tax map and images on Google and it came right up. And then our tax map is resources also on the county page.
Okay. All right. The motion to close to the public, there's no other public comment. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, we have an update discussion on the animal ordinance.
I stole it, I went around seeing everybody.
I saw that.
That was funny. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Don't trust me with pens.
That's okay. What was I?
By the way, if I could just insert something here, Comcast is having a partial outage because of a router problem in the area. So if you see us dropping in and out, or the connections to the Zoom connection dropping in and out, that's the reason why.
Thank you.
Right. Right. So the end of the year, and I brought up over the last couple of years that we keep this this as a discussion point if there have to be changes or concerns and questions. We have the town has an issue currently with a rooster. Multiple roosters on a property, non-farm property, and it is disturbing the peace. Now, I will say it is one property currently. Doing a little, looking into what we currently have. We have chapter 113 in Bethlehem Township, which is called Peace and Good Order. That was passed by a township committee of yesteryear. With basically general nuisances. Looking at chapter 113, the land use board has really no say about any of this as far as noise goes. That this would be a township committee issue. Where it comes into land use is if we want to restrict roosters, chickens, animals. That's something that we choose to basically move forward with. Again, it's what everybody's feeling is. Everyone has the right to live in the town and not be bothered by, you know, loud animals. But we need to go further with this, with, you know, with the whole board's feelings or what their concerns are.
If it's one problem, I can't see making it work.
It's one problem that we know.
Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't mean that it's the only problem in town. And yeah, there might be one, there might be 100. And you know, the problem is that when you have
you get a lot of phone.
really, I don't know.
I laugh at it.
Huh?
My neighbor's got a rooster and it's going constantly, and I just sit there and think, thank God I'm not living next to them. And you know, I kind of find it a little bit funny.
Well, it's not funny if you actually live right next door.
So my issue with that, so I support amending our animal ordinance significantly to get it back to close to what it was. There were flaws with where it was when it was amended to now essentially nothing. And that was in reaction to one case as well, that included more domestic animals. So I think the theory that we're reacting to one thing is flawed in both cases. I think in the end, we're here to provide proper planning. And so, you know, we have 1 acre, 1.5 acre zoning throughout the town. We have farms, we have larger properties. Is it smart zoning to allow somebody to have, you know, 10 chickens and 3 roosters on a 1 acre property when there's 20 houses that are on 1 acre, and so they're relatively close together? Is it smart to have 5 horses on 5 acres because Rutgers, you know, agricultural school recommends the extension over in Kutztown, recommends 6 acres per horse. So I think it's smart planning and there's science behind what's there, both for waste management and the health of the animals. And so I think it's flawed planning if we don't regulate it within the science that's behind proper caretaking for these animals and then the respect for the neighborhoods in which they exist. So I strongly recommend we look at this ordinance if you want to address, and I would encourage addressing, you know, this one instance. If you want to amend quickly, you can amend quickly to eliminate roosters. But I would recommend in 2024 that we strongly look at this animal ordinance and look at what is in the best interest or the best practices of planning and not reacting to any one particular case or the other.
Now, this is all for us to look at and make comments.
Can I ask a question? How many complaints over noise have we had in the last, like, let's say, quarter of the year, or even the whole year? How many have come before the committee or complaints here about noise of neighbors and things?
To be quite honest with you, I know a lot of people who complain about noise, but don't know what to do about it and don't know who to go to. So, and it's not just the roosters, it's also people with these high-powered, you know, off-road vehicles.
Again, going to this chapter 113, Peace and Good Order. This discusses radio, loudspeakers, animals and birds, loading and unloading of from garbage trucks to various different, you know, machinery, standing motor vehicles, construction and demolition, yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, singing.
And the state police said the day that this was introduced, the state police said, we can't do anything with this.
No.
And just to finish, and operating any off-road recreational vehicle.
Yeah.
So we discussed, or I should say not we, a previous board and township committee have discussed it. And, you know, again, so this was passed. So we can come up with, now, the enforcement, which is 113-3, the provisions of this chapter may be enforced by the police agencies of the township of Bethlehem. Right. Or upon filing, or, and this is part of it, the filing of a complaint in the municipal court in the township of Bethlehem by any inhabitant of the township of Bethlehem, either with or without prior notice to the person committing a violation of this chapter.
So we don't know how many there really are. I get quite a few calls from residents throughout the year. I couldn't tell you how many. But I don't know, we're at the end of the year. I've probably fielded, I'm saying close to 20 calls asking about this ordinance, and there's nothing that I can do, so I send them to the state police. If they're not busy, the state police go out and they talk to their neighbors and try to calm it down, because that's their role. Sometimes they don't address it at all. If there's an accident, this doesn't take a high priority. But I do want to make it very clear, and in some instances, residents have the right to come into the court, you have to call and make an appointment.
Absolutely, and
right
that's
to come
right.
to the court and file your own complaint. We don't give legal advice. I think noise ordinances are tough to.
And they all
enforce.
heard, we had a problem, what, few years back with something, and you have to have the machine that actually does decibels for certain things.
Yeah, there's no
We
power.
don't have anything.
And you have to have.
This is, guys, we have one person talk. Monica's told me a couple times, it's really hard to understand on the tape, so.
This is all interpreted, right, and where how the receiver receives it. You need specific concrete things. So the police are absolutely right. And when they come out and try to do what neighbors should do amongst themselves to mitigate things, the enforcement, you can't, and it is all interpreted. What used to bother one person may not bother another person. Kids riding on ATVs, yeah, if they're destroying property and things like that, absolutely, they should know what area to go. The loudness of it, are they loud? Yes, but to some other person, maybe no. And how do you measure that? We need concrete. We're talking about law and things. We're not the enforcers, but who would we pass this to? And how would we even advise as a committee? How would you advise anybody to? You can't.
So this was again, something that was written over one complaint, a dog complaint. They passed this. The person who was complaining about the dog went to the state police. The state police said there's nothing they can do about it. And what ended up happening was the woman who was filing the complaints about the dog got a complaint filed against her for harassment by the neighbors, and she ended up in court with more problems than the
Then listening to the dog.
This is absolutely useless unless
Yeah,
we
there's
have,
no measurement.
unless we have a police officer that is trained in noise abatement or use of a noise, use of the noise monitor, the proper use of the noise monitor. And we don't have that, and the state police doesn't have that, and they're not gonna do it.
Jose, the thing is, this doesn't give us anything that says we measure it this way.
No.
Okay,
It's
that's
not
what this
It
fails.
doesn't matter.
Hold on, I'm trying to, let's get everybody's feelings.
No, this wasn't, this was written it looks like it's very specific, but it's actually, when you drill down on it, it's really not. So it was, and I don't even think it came before this board, because it's technically not land use. It did not come before this board. So this I wouldn't really rely on.
Brad?
I know it's a different town, but in our old town, we actually had a neighbor scream and yell and almost take a swing at me over our barking dog. And so we ended up talking to the police. They're like, unless he did almost like an absolute video recording of it, video and audio recording of it, if you just did a tape recording of it, there's no way to prove it to my property or my dog or anything else. Like, you'd have to sit there and film my dog barking for, I think this is 10 minutes, I think our old time was 15, and then have to film that the entire time, then to file a complaint where maybe the police can do something, and then even then, he's like, but if you go to court, you know, Even claiming that the dog's rightfully barking at the guy filming him. You know, so, you know, is it really a nuisance? So I don't think there's anything.
That's actually in the ordinance.
Dave.
They talk about being provoked.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you enforce it and then you put too much in it and it becomes a ticky-tacky thing where, you know, I mean, look at this, you start up a leaf blower to blow your leaves and then someone files a complaint against you. Like, I don't, at what point do we stop regulating and use common sense? I mean, I think that's the dilemma.
What time does the garbage come around in the summer?
Yeah, like 6 in the morning.
Yeah, even before 6.
Yeah.
I've heard of it 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Again, snow blowers they talk about. You know, when we're getting a storm, I'm going out there, I'm not thinking what time it is.
Yeah.
Look, if I'm getting 3 feet of snow, I'm gonna be going out there 3 and 4 times.
Yeah, well, you know how many times I've been out
That's the
at night at 2 o'clock so I can get out in the morning to go to work.
So, but I think we're not talking about this piece in good order.
Dan? Comments?
I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, that this is probably something we should focus on. I don't know if an animal ordinance is separate from this type of ordinance. I mean, as far as the rooster thing goes, I agree. I've had chickens myself. And I think if you have a small property, there's no reason not just have hens. If you're doing it for eggs or backyard chicken, I know it's like a new popular thing.
Okay, we can do something along the lines of limiting it on some of the smaller lots. You know, again, limiting roosters. We do a limiting rooster thing, then we're gonna have people that don't like barking dogs. So then we start saying, we're gonna limit barking dogs on the smaller lots. It's just, it doesn't end. Because I mean, I will tell you, you know, neighbor's dog is barking nonstop.
A dog is expected to be in a residential community. A rooster is not.
But we're in a farming,
I don't think that's either state.
We are in a residential community in everywhere where there are houses that are on 1 acre lots or 1.5 acre lots. That is not a farm community. The farm communities are anything over 6 acres because you have to have 1 acre for your house too. So it's got to be over 6 acres. That gives the separation so that at least that rooster that's crowing all the time is at least that far away. You know, when you're saying that you're going to have roosters, you know, right next to each other, you know, it becomes, I know that we had a rooster years ago, 20 years ago, you know, 2 houses up from us, and that thing would crow all night long. And you know, they don't crow in the morning when the sun rises. They crow whenever they see anything, a deer or a squirrel walks out onto the lake. Yeah, they do.
They roost.
No, they crow.
I've never heard that rooster.
They crow at night.
I've never heard once in your
farm behind it.
I've never heard it in 20 years of having chickens at night.
Most towns, I just want to say one last thing. Most towns around us ban rooster. You can have chickens, can't have roosters.
But this thing, you're banning school buses.
No, we're not talking
about.
This is separate. That was like, I'm not sure what that was supposed to ever be.
It covers everything.
I think we need to look at.
Yeah, it's just.
At the animal.
7 o'clock in the morning, school buses,
Hold on. So the animal ordinance is really kind of, you know, if you look at what should have probably happened, rather than creating whatever that is. Yeah, piece of good order, which not great. Would have been to clarify domesticated animals in our animal ordinance, leave the rest of the ordinance alone. There's confusion about what a domesticated animal was in the previous ordinance. And I think some of the differentiation, like Jose was trying to point out, so like, we've asked, so this is not a farm, but we've asked for this, the one particular situation, for the state agricultural, I don't know the type board, it's not even a board, but it's, yeah, they have animal control. So they may go out to this particular property and they're gonna say that it's unlawful or unfair to have 3 roosters and 10 chickens or hens or whatever they are on an acre, because it's, but we don't have control, but animal agricultural control does. The agricultural control doesn't have control over a dog. They can't come out and say, you've got 3 dogs that are barking all the time. If you have more than 8, then you're a kennel. So there's all these caveats, but I think that's the difference between looking at domesticated versus the rooster. And again, I think you should go back to the proper care of the animal. I think what we have now is unfair to the animals and unfair to the residents as well, to allow whatever is there. So, and then I just the caveat throw in, and I don't want to speak for Deputy Mayor Nelson, but I think we've had this conversation with the noise within ordinance and Grace Ann had brought it up. I will share, I wish, and you know, we're here to, altruistically, we try to help as much as we can, and sometimes it gets us in trouble because we're bound by whatever these ordinances are. And if you ask us to get involved, we have to follow the ordinance. And I would ask, we're a rural community, but so a lot of and those 20 phone calls that I just shared, most of them are neighbor to neighbor issues. Neighbors would try to settle them themselves. Yes. You're probably gonna come up with a better outcome. Yes. If you come to us, we have to follow whatever these ordinances are, and that may involve getting the state police involved, it may get zoning involved, and it's not the best way to always solve this issue with your neighbor. So while that can't be an official doctrine, I would offer, I think, to keep peace in neighborhoods, to at least have a discussion with your neighbor first before you consider coming and asking for official action from the township committee or anybody in authority, like zoning officer.
With that being said, I'm in favor of reviewing the animal permits. I don't know how restrictive we would make it, but not in favor of the running joke that we've used is you can have a hippopotamus in your pool and nobody gonna do anything about it. So I am in favor of looking at some sort of restriction.
So we could probably ask them.
I was looking into Hunterdon County because we are within Hunterdon County, and Hunterdon County has some limitations for animals.
Yes.
So that's,
or surrounding.
So if we don't have something, we're still bound, or people are still bound. You can't have 50 horses on one acre property based on Hunterdon County standards. There are standards there. It's not that we're running.
No,
we can work on this together. Rutgers has an agricultural extension right in Kutztown, and that's where part of our first ordinance came from. And I was recently at Rutgers for a strategic planning thing and mentioned this to them, and they're more than happy to come out and work with either the planning board or our planner, and they probably have some templates already. So I would suggest that's a professional resource that we have available to us that we ask for some help.
The last time this happened, I got online and they had breakdowns.
Yeah.
How many animals, how many. I had it all figured out. So I've got a question for Kara. So now that we've basically removed our animal ordinance, and now we have roosters that are causing a problem, if we now say you can't have a rooster, is there any sort of, like, is that legal? Like, is there a grandfathering issue?
I think that's definitely something we have to look into, and I think it's gonna depend on what type of ordinance we're talking about. Is it going to be a noise ordinance? Is it going to be a removal of roosters?
If someone has a hippo in their pool right now, it can be forced to get rid of it. Now that it's allowed.
I mean, I'd like to see that first before you do anything, but assuming that's the case. I mean, listen, there are also, to Ken's point, we've got Hunterdon County requirements, there's also state noise requirements. So I mean, yes, you would have to prove to the state that they're exceeding the noise requirements, which would have a certain level of evidentiary proof, and that it also was that particular person, entity, vehicle, whatever. But, that is there regardless of what we do. I think that it would make sense to take a look and see what the county has, see what other towns have, and see how well they've worked. Because enforcement is always ultimately going to be the case. And if you're going to spend all this time on something that you think is going to solve the problem, but it can't be enforced.
I think that addressing this as noise is the wrong way to go, because we just do not have a way of enforcing that. And nobody in the county or the state has been willing to deal with any noise issue in our town to date. So I think that, what is very commonly done in, my son has chickens in Washington Township. He went to Tractor Supply. He got his 4 chickens. One of them was a rooster. Guaranteed all hens. One of them was a rooster. And the first thing he had to do was, as soon as they identified that it was a rooster, They had to take it, he took it to a friend who had a farm, and that rooster is living on the farm. But, yeah, many towns, especially if we do not have large acre lots, eliminate, they exclude roosters from their, out of hand. That's the first thing that they do. So I think that's the first thing that we should do. And then we can go into further in depth into other things, because I agree that this is going to be grandfathered, and those roosters are going to be able to live, that are already there. They're going to be able to live out the rest of their lives.
How long do they live?
It depends on how big the bear is.
50 years.
Set of circumstances, because we don't have a rooster licensing program in the state.
Right.
Or in the town, so we adopt the ordinance, the next day, 50 people go out and get roosters, oh, they've been here forever.
It's still.
And they gotta provide proof of what it, I mean, that's why I said we gotta figure out where you wanna go first.
Yes.
And then figure that out, because that enforcement in and of itself is gonna be.
Because most people are common sense people. I give the public a lot of credit. Let's get real here too, what's going on. Granted, yes, perhaps for that person with the rooster as a neighbor and that, it's, absolutely, they think it's horrid and I can't stand it anymore and whatnot. But they've got to talk with one another. They got to, and also it's interpretive, like I said. But the big thing is that once you go down this rabbit hole of start to regulate with the animals and all this, it gets crazy, because I've been on the ordinance committee. We've labored over the animal ordinance even, and it does get crazy. And a lot of our folks in town, you can take a poll. Let's do a poll even. How many like to have animals, and what kind of animals do they have on their property? Let's see how many we really have. You know what I'm saying? And then some may not even tell you, because they'll be afraid that you'll be regulating them.
Well, the problem with stuff like that, though, Grace, is that anything now is falling under the notion of an emotional support animal. And people will have ostriches that they're gonna call in, right? And so that's just gonna be like.
So we've come full circle. Why have ordinance then?
All right, let's open this public, just so we get any public comment for this. I need a motion to open.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Public comment. Line up.
Suzanne Wilder.
Name.
Suzanne Wilder, 424 Charlestown Road. I'm not sure I would agree with having to restrict it again. It seems like you're spending a lot of money, taxpayer dollars, on the professionals of writing, taken away. And I agree with Kara, enforcement's everything anyway. So honestly, I remember the person who you wrote that for had chickens, and the neighbor didn't want him to have his chickens, if I'm recalling correctly. And sometimes if you stop focusing on I don't agree that everyone has common sense, though, because I think in today's world, everyone's ready to fight with each other rather than to get along, rather than common sense or not.
Well, common sense, I meant that they're not going to have little farms in their food. They're not going to have 85 chickens.
I don't know. And I think we want to try to live together, I think. And if it's not going to be a rooster, it's going to be some, growing up, my dad had peacocks, and that used to yell help. And, he had a string in his bedroom that pulled a string that made the hose go off to squirt water on the peacocks. It's like, they're way worse than roosters. But so you can get down that rabbit hole where you're constantly like, okay, now what, now this, now that. And again, it's enforcement. And then you're going to have the same problem with pitting one neighbor against another because they're mad because of blah, blah, blah. So sometimes just letting things work it out. And if the noise ordinance doesn't cover it, then you address fixing the peace and good order ordinance. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Carl Marazzo, 1-2 Blossom Road. With that thing with roosters, it's like when you live next to the highway, you kind of get used to it, the trucks and all that, the Jake brakes and all that.
No, you
Technical noise, yes, the big part. All right. Now, what I'm saying is, I've worked with different people from moving into the town and stuff, and I had people approach me not too far from here, doing a job. They can't take the smell. It's the farm spreading manure. They think it's terrible. I'm just saying to people griping about the rooster, maybe they're not from around this area, they're moved in this area, they don't know what goes on in this area. I have a problem with my neighbor right now for 2 years now. His dog runs down in my yard. I've watched him kill a groundhog. I chased him out of my yard. I've called, actually, I went up there 3 times and I finally called the game wardens because I watch him chase deer out across the field. And the game warden says, I can go up there and write him a $42 summons. He said, what you got to do is video, like you were saying, video everything, and then call the state police and they'll take it from there. Without the video, we can't do anything.
Video would work out to that person.
That's what I'm saying. And for the rooster, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tough on that part. I don't see any reason why we could ban on a rooster. My neighbor down the street, I see the plates from Vermont. I think they have about a dozen chickens. I see him sitting in the pen, playing with the chickens. You know, no lie. But anyway, I just want to voice my opinion. But I think, to clarify, I think you were just talking about banning roosters.
Just roosters.
But are all property owners? Or you think?
No, not farms.
Well, yeah.
It's just an discussion point.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the one thing that should be kept in mind is unless you're trying to breed chickens, you don't need a rooster. Eggs come from chicken.
Yeah.
Hens.
What rooster does, they do increase leg production.
Andrew Lackby, 3 Farrow Lane. Mr. Nelson, thank you for getting directly to the root of the problem and going to Ms. Kaczynski about the rooster. As far as the peace and good order, following the protocol that's outlined by the town, going to the municipal court with filing the proper paperwork, proper documentation. I've received absolutely nothing about 6 months from the court stating that there's any type of hearing scheduled, anything. I don't know if there's a backlog in the court, due all to the respect of, you know, things going on Zoom and there being a backlog everywhere in courts. It would just be nice to have an update as to where it stands with the court. I did speak with Mr. Fleming about the matter.
Is this about an animal?
The peace and good order violation. Now it's very difficult to hear anything going on at block 34, lot 12 because of the 78 traffic. It's almost in decibels, probably double or triple what I was hearing previously, but the smell is still there.
Yeah, we can't comment on that.
That's outside. I mean, we're trying to just discuss.
Well, this has to do with the peace and good order.
That's not.
Just so you remember
I
what
understand, but the
it had to do with.
component of it was one aspect that the town has, but we have no control of this. This is outside the premise of actual land use. So that's what I was. The peace and goodwill has the peace and goodwill is strictly good order. The peace and good order ordinance is with the township committee.
Sure, but it was explained that there's a process to go through.
Did you file an actual?
I did.
An actual complaint?
I did, signed by about approximately 12 residents.
Okay. I don't have any control over that. So what happens with that is the judge and or county prosecutor, depending on what it is, reviews whether there's enough evidence to make it to actually act on that. So that's the component here. If the resident goes and files, it's up to the judge. All I can ask is the administrator to follow up on it.
Sure.
I'll do that.
And I'll provide them with whatever additional documentation is needed, video, whatever.
That's up to the judge, but at least they're supposed to give you a response one way or the other within a certain time frame, so I'll find that.
Thank you.
Again, I would point out that the person who this was written for, when she took all her videos of the dogs barking, that she got a summons for harassment. So, you know, that's the issue That's how good this was. This did absolutely nothing because we have nobody who can go out there and measure the sound. So, and we shouldn't even be discussing the peace and good order.
Yeah.
Here, because it has nothing to do with land use. Make motion to close.
Anybody else have any public comment on Zoom?
This is Greg Glazer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Hey, Greg Glazer, 304 Turkey Hill Road. Little backstory. So the four roosters aren't my neighbors, but they're my mother-in-law's neighbors. You know, she's been in town since 1972, so well aware of what roosters and chickens and what to expect out here in Bethlehem Township. I've been trying to help her navigate through this issue, which is causing her a lot of health issues at the moment. So the neighbor has four roosters and two dogs. They like to get into contests all day long about who can be the loudest and who can do it the longest. There are no chickens. So there's really no point in four roosters. I've known the neighbor, so we started on that path of working neighbor to neighbor. Eventually, this person, so they were originally free range roosters. She's since moved them into a barn after one discussion. She's moved them into a coop after another discussion. The noise, obviously, you can't stop a rooster from crowing. I've reached out to zoning. I haven't heard back yet. We've reached out to the state police under this nuisance ordinance. State police can't do anything. And I do recall the woman in town with the dog and the summons against her. So obviously treading very carefully in this issue so as not to get a summons on our end for harassment. And the owner of the roosters doesn't even live on the property. It's her dad's property. So just trying to navigate it. I appreciate everybody starting to look into this. So there's really nothing that can be done. That ordinance, as you guys have noticed, once you drill down into it, there's nothing to measure. There's nothing that anybody can come out and say, yeah, it crowed 4 times in 5 minutes. Then that's a violation. So again, I just want to give the rest of the committee the backstory and the public there. So it's not just somebody that moved from the city to come out here and was surprised that there's a rooster. And just show, you know, I do believe most people have common sense. And I do believe if you're going to have a rooster, you have chickens, you're having a farm, you know, for some eggs for yourself and throw some on the corner. The 4 roosters really serve no purpose agriculturally without any chickens. And, you know, this is that case where there is nothing in the ordinance of the town that would help a resident. I honestly don't believe the courts are going to be able to help since there's nothing measurable. And we would have to collect a whole ton of data to prove the case of whatever it is we have to go to court for. So again, just appreciate what you guys are doing and willing to have an open mind and take a look at this issue again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? Motion to close to the public?
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Right, so our reorder meeting. We want to get this published January 8th, 2024. Will be the corresponding Monday night. So we're going to get that published if that's okay with everybody. Need a vote to open to the public for general questions or comments.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Another chance for the public to make any other comments. We've been very wide open tonight. Charlie.
102 Blossom Road. I'm looking for an update on that landscape place. They come in with a site plan yet or anything on that?
I've heard nothing about
I
it.
see them working out of there. I didn't know if they had approvals to work out of there or not. That's what I was asking.
Which landscape is the-
173 down below,
Right next to the liquor store?
the white building you said on,
the one that by the tire place?
yeah, down below.
Yeah. But didn't that get shut down?
They're still working out
Asked
there.
to cease operations, but I'm not sure where it stands now. We'll find out.
So that'd be from John.
Yeah, we can find out.
I know that where they put the mafia blocks, I call them. That's like a floodplain in that area, because I know the neighbor next door, they couldn't put any addition on because of the floodplain with that greenhouse.
Yeah.
And I was here in meetings long time ago, that a guy come in, want to do something with that building. And Bob Bogart said, you can't do nothing with there because it's all in the floodplain. And that guy just came in and did everything, and he's been there for what, 2 years now?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it stands. I think it was referred to Highlands for, and DEP for action, because it's beyond our enforcement at that point, so, but I'm not sure where it stands.
Well, who can you push a button on?
If I will follow with DEP and see
All
where.
right, I'll call Highlands and ask. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from the public? Need a motion to close the public?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes from November 13th, 2023. That's right.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any further discussion? Okay. The only one that we done. I'm sorry. We're still reading.
No, I was.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Mr. Mayor?
Just two things, I met with, our administrator, representative from Sustainable New Jersey. And I had shared the township meeting, we have our sustainable bronze certification for 2013. I think it was my first year as mayor, and we had a green team working on that, and we would like to reestablish ourselves as a bronze certified sustainable New Jersey town. I would also encourage people to get involved with the Environmental Commission. Mr. Addison and I were talking about that to help get us to that certification point. We're I would say probably, almost halfway there with some of the initiatives we've already, have in place. And then some of them are unique and interesting, like the electronic or electric vehicle charging stations. Some of them involve, emergency management as well, so involve the floodplain. So there's opportunities for people to get involved if they would like to be involved, in that process. But again, I would like to see the members join the environmental commission to help out with that process. So we'll be working on that in 2024 rather vigorously, hoping to be certified by the end of 2024. The report will be due in July of 2024. And then the only other thing, December 21st is our last township committee meeting of the year, and we do a volunteer appreciation at 6:30. So of course, all of you as volunteers are welcome to join us at there's light food and refreshments. Members of the public are of course always welcome to the township event. Here at 6:30, 7 o'clock, we'll present our volunteers of the year awards, I should say. There are multiples each year, and then the township meeting is at 7:30. So again, December 21st at 6:30 in this room. If you would like to join us, I'd love to have a nice crowd there. That is a search question.
The only thing I just want to make a comment just on what you said. I'm pretty sure class 4 members on the planning board cannot be members on the environmental commission.
No, it's not pretty. I was looking for people here. I was looking, I'm hoping
just in case anybody here is.
I'm hoping people in the public.
There's
all 4 guests that are here, but the point too is we're going to be really kind of using sustainable plans to hopefully engage more. I'm not looking for people here are already volunteering some at multiple levels. I'm looking to engage volunteers that are not already active in town, and hopefully engaging that sustainable process gets some new interest. And we're going to be reaching out both through the recreation, through the senior citizens meeting, and then I was talking about even going out to North Hunterdon Volunteer Day. We'll be looking for Bethlehem residents, but that's where they go to school and they do a volunteer day. So maybe we'll see Jose out there at the volunteer table at the high school in the spring. But the key is we want to engage some new faces, not those that are here. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, there's a limit, right, then, how many board members can be on that? There are no names,
Yeah, you can.
No, class 4 members can only be on planning board, can't be on environmental. You want to see like a picture of holding elves actually?
I thought I guess I shared that it's not land use related, but for those who've seen, there's a picture floating around of me holding an elf. Mayor DiGirolamo over here in the township, I'll say, it's a very good sport. I mentioned this at the township committee meeting, but again, not land use related, but we had he initiated a friendly bet that I thought was kind of lame, so I encountered our middle school soccer team playing each other for the middle school championship. And the bet was whichever team lost, that mayor would dress up as an elf and attend the other mayor's Christmas lighting. And there's a monetary contribution of $250 to the Booster Club. And I think it was 30 seconds left. It was 0-0. 30 seconds left. Thankfully, the Bethlehem Township scored a goal. Because I know Dave and I argued about that because I say nobody wants to see a 6'6", 400-pound elf. Dave thinks people do. Thankfully, Dave showed up in his elf outfit, and there may have been some ornaments hung on the Union Township tree with that photo as well. And like I said, he was a very good sport about it. Good job. I do owe our middle school team some debt of gratitude that I have not figured out yet to share with them.
Pizza party.
I want to encourage them for next year because paybacks are.
Judy?
Well, Paul stole my thunder on volunteers. You can put it just like that in the notes.
Should coordinate it, sorry.
Actually, no, nothing further, but I was just, before I came here reading through the planner, I had gotten an advanced copy of this, and it looks like there's some good things that the board might want to focus on. The cannabis regulatory, model tree ordinance, which I don't think from NJDEP, which I wouldn't think would apply. And then there was something that I saw real quick, Middlesex County, looks like they're doing, or did this year, a truck traffic study. I don't know if Hunterdon has anything like that.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, yes.
We have a very localized problem. You know, that's a, I mean,
It's not too low.
Yeah, I don't have.
we have everywhere. We have regional traffic, but we have local issues, concentrated issues.
I don't think so. I think
Charlottetown Road and.
it's
I see
everywhere.
them on Scotts Road, in Church, Mountain View.
173.
I think the state, I mean, there is a state law working its way through to try to mandate trucks use truck level GPS.
Yeah.
Commercial GPS.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much the only, because we're talking about non-local people.
Yeah, if they're using truck GPS, I think, because it's just based on complaints on our community page, which is an unofficial page, and phone calls to myself, we did get GPS units to update commercial routes when they started the rock blasting for Tuttle Road, Turkey Hill Road, Person Road, in addition to signage. And I'm gonna say knock on wood, have not heard this year at all of any trucks or having complaints. There's been some issues on the top end of some of those roads from 579, but coming from 173, if they're using commercial units, those are blocked out as alternate routes. And it does make a difference from what I've seen over the past year.
I don't know if they still do, but GPS is used to be able to buy one specific for truck.
It is,
And, but
Plus the state's pushing for it.
they were really expensive. So, at one time, some of them would just let you download it, but then yeah, so they use that.
But those you can choose, you can choose a commercial truck, they're not as accurate as you can choose, but you can choose, you can choose a truck.
And the damage that they're doing around town, especially, I mean, Charlestown Road has been for a very long time. And the thing is, the worst thing is that the county has done things that are extremely counterproductive. Because most of the trucks that are getting onto Charlestown Road think that they're going into the side entrance of the truck stop, which there is none. So then they see they can't go there, they're trying to turn around, then they block off the parking lot that everybody used to for the hunting area. So they block that off so that trucks can't turn around, so it just forces them to damage the sides of the roads everywhere. You know, they get stuck, they get, I feel sorry for them to some extent. I feel worse for us.
Seriously, I mean, it is, I mean, again, on 579 at the bend,
yeah,
it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So it's happening, every couple days.
What happens on Strauss and Fox Farm, when I was there, at least 6 times they got, trying to make that, and they would get caught on the bridge.
Yeah.
One time guy drove off into the creek. I'm not joking, I swear to God, 2 o'clock in the morning, on the other side. Yeah. Remember?
You can blame most of
Got something very quickly.
Years ago, if I was going a long distance or something, I used to write it all out in big letters in the truck, so then I could just glance at it. Who my next exit, I knew. Well, I think now you're lazy, you just depend on your phone, and you end up where you're not supposed to be.
So Brunswick Pike is finished. There was, a lot of chatter that's been out about that. It's a very substantial change. If nobody's driven down it, to some extent, I think it's nicer. It's more of a path to follow, more of a country path. It looks nice. We have a house right in the middle of it, so it really affects our house probably the most of anybody who's of the 4 people that are on that street.
Well, yeah, technically he's asked for it was 4, but.
So we could say 3 people. 2 of which were present. So, but the road got done. It got done quickly. A lot of work was done.
Yeah, it did do that.
So, I mean, it looks good. It looks good. So, I mean,
It'll look nicer when the grass grows in.
And if there's any concern, they They do have a 1-year maintenance agreement or contract that's in their contract, so if there's, you know, again, they put a lot of topsoil down there. And trucks run through it and, you know, damage it, they do have to be back in the spring, so it'll be replanted and everything without our tax dollars being affected anymore.
Yeah, I've got a question. You got a weight limit sign, you think the cops are gonna pull over and tractor trailers that come to my farm? When they come down,
We consider local delivery, they may come over and they share their local delivery, they're allowed to. Well, should let them go.
Tractor trailer can go on any road in our town as long as it brings one of our houses.
Oh, there's a new weight limit sign? Is there a new?
I didn't see the sign, but.
Yeah, 6 ton, so, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
They're 6 ton.
Yeah, but it is local. You know, there's farms in there, there's your farm, so that's not what this is about. That's not what.
Well, I was just worried. I didn't know you were gonna cut it out.
All I gotta do is show a bill of lading, you're going to, issue your guidance on.
Well, they don't have the bill of lading, they're coming to pick up.
They have an address right around the corner. I think they're.
Yeah.
I don't know what status for the EMT tower that we approved to go over here or not approved.
Haven't heard anything.
You know, so it's urgent we approved it.
We didn't have to approve it, it was urgent.
Well,
We could have done, and probably still should do, is continue the solid yellow line around the bend, but that's county road. But that was part of the whole problem. Because.
on that road is poorly.
Well, I think, yeah, people hadn't.
People are not blowing through that stop sign the way they used to.
No, not stop sign, they would come up past the. No, they would come up past the school and then make a left going to your house. If they would have had a solid double line there.
Oh,
The people would have made the left.
Yeah, nobody knows what a solid double line.
Yeah. Online, people just.
That and the way it was painted in the past, they only had the solid stop line on half the road.
Right,
So it looked like the road was open.
right.
If they painted it right the first time, there wouldn't have been a problem.
The biggest problem is that was so wide at that intersection. That, I mean, it looked like it was a highway that you should certainly be able to go, and then it narrows down as you get to the very top. To like, just a little bit more than a lane.
I was worried.
Yeah. No, we're good.
I was worried, but you got a 85-foot long truck.
Yeah.
And you're coming from Lewisburg, and you gotta make that left. You know, putting that grass there, as it is, you gotta go into Brunswick Pike to get that trailer around the corner. Otherwise, you hit the wall at the hotel with back wheels, because that takes short of this.
I'll be a professional driver.
Yeah.
I know, but it's just, so now if you have a car coming the other way, you gotta watch that they don't end up like over at Walmart, and people, they end up under the trailers in the tight turn, because the people aren't paying attention. So that's.
It does seem like they're slowed down.
I would have cut it out, with just pain.
Yeah. Any other board members have anything? Monica, everything?
So next steps, just so that I have them, is that, get a bullet point list of the master plan process and get that out to Lou. I'll work on that this week. I'm back in the office on Wednesday. And then, Paul and I will work on, working with finding some templates or something for the animal information. And I'll probably put that back on the agenda on the 22nd of January.
Any questions back to Megan? I have mine too, if you want to.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have a regular meeting on January 8th, or is it just gonna be reorganized?
There's nothing else right now pending, so.
And we're having a Christmas Day.
You have to go
And we could certainly start, you know, going down the, working on on the reevaluation.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is actually, this bit last meeting.
The last meeting?
Yeah, but last one there. Nobody else does anything?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Night, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
Eric.
I think we can.
So it's like.
You should pull out your.